Right, Raheem. So last night you called it. Daniel Dubois wins a war against Fabio Wardley, and I'm almost too tired after all the excitement of that fight to say Daniel Dubois knocks out, stops Fabio Wardley in a massive, brilliant show from Manchester. Yeah, so let's get to it though, man. It's the fight of the year, probably in all likelihood, at least through May, will without question be one of the fight of the year candidates at the very least. And to me, Raheem, alongside Louis Klitschko, Lyhovich Brewster, Joshua Klitschko, Fury Wilder 3, and I did say Joshua Klitschko too. Okay, good. And yeah, Usyk Fury 1, which I think was a higher level than a few of those fights I mentioned, but not delivered just the all-out action of some of those other fights I mentioned. But this fight is right there with the best heavyweight classics of the new millennium since the turn of the century. But it was a great fight. Wardley gets stopped on his feet. Dubois gets up from 2 knockdowns, as everybody knows now. But you were the man who had a great feel for this fight, as you do with many fights. But this one, you really nailed it the whole way through when we were heading into fight week. So go ahead, let us know what you thought, man. You were calling it with David Haye. David Haye, the former undisputed cruiserweight champion and WBA heavyweight champion, had to bow respectfully to Radio Raheem for nailing this fight the whole way throughout.
There was so much narrative going into this fight that I believe people, while watching in real time, were prejudiced by their presumptions. Those who believe that Daniel Dubois is a quitter, they saw a fight unfolding one way that inevitably was going to either end up with Dubois being knocked out and counted out, or taking that knee and staying down when he could have gotten up. Those who thought that Fabio Wardley always finds a way and can always pull it out no matter how behind he is on the cards, we became blinded to the humanity of Wardley himself and the fact that he is not, in fact, a superhero or superhuman, in the sense that you have to, at some point, take into account what you're actually looking at and set aside what you're expecting. He created such expectancy that at some point he was going to be able to pull this thing out of the dirt, to come back from what seemed like the dead, overcome a fight card, or I should say a scorecard stacked against him to get the one-punch knockout, that people were genuinely blinded to what was happening to him physically down the stretch of this fight. I have to set that part up because that is what informs the beginning of the fight. What happens at the beginning of the fight, it solidifies all of those notions going into subsequently the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and ultimately into the 11th. With that immediate knockdown inside, I believe it was like 15 seconds of the first round.
Yeah.
Well, everybody who called Daniel a quitter, everybody who said that Wardley was too much, that he was going to walk over Daniel. And I told you that Wardley himself believed that this was going to be the outcome of that fight. And some of the people in the comments scoff, like, oh, well, how do you get to read his mind? You don't know what he thinks, blah, blah, blah. No, I did know what he thought. He thought he was going to do exactly what happened in the first 3 rounds, and probably that Daniel wasn't going to get into the 4th. So when he got that early knockdown, it solidified in his own mind that Daniel ain't more than what I thought he was. And then he lost the 2nd round, but Wardley's used to losing rounds. And then Daniel takes the knee in the 3rd. And what does that tell Wardley? He is the quitter that I thought he was. And there's no way this guy is going 12 with me, period. I'm going to make him quit. All I got to do is keep doing what I'm doing. However, he forgot already that he lost the 2nd round because he got a knockdown in the 1st and Daniel took a knee in the 3rd. So clearly the message to him is just keep doing what you've been doing in this fight and with every fight before, losing rounds and getting knockdowns and getting knockouts before the final bell rings in the 12th. I'm not going to go further in this fight than that. I want to hear your conversation about the first 3 rounds, because for me, this fight We have time. We're not going to break it down literally round by round, but I want to attack it section by section because it's not just the physical battle. It's the mental battle that's happening in the corners between the coaches and what they are instructing their fighters to do and the adjustments that they need to make. It is a perception battle of the audience, what they're watching, what they expect to happen versus what's actually unfolding before their eyes. And it is a professional challenge to the referee himself on how to officiate a fight like this, who rightly, and I say this often, should know the history of the fighters and what's on the line. I've said before, you got to know, if you're a referee, who this guy is, what he's done in the past, what he can come back from, if he's been down before, if he's the kind of guy that does pull it out, if he can defend himself, or if he's dodging punches and is known to come back and fight. As a referee, you should have that history. You should know that, because that's part of protecting the fighter and also giving him enough leash, if you will, or leeway to do his thing, because you got to know what his thing is. So in the first three, how did you see it? Just not knowing, don't give me the hindsight, but while you were experiencing it live in the first three, how are you perceiving this thing?
Well, thankfully, I have the live round by round to show I'm not fibbing, right? And yeah. I thought in the first three, I didn't like it from Wardley, even though he dropped him twice. Immediately midway and towards the end of the first round, I said he's got to settle down. Wardley has to settle down. He almost looked like a guy that was carrying a lot of anxiety and worry, and maybe even a little fear, for lack of a better word, a more articulate word, because I don't Wardley almost has no fear, but these are human beings. So fear that if I don't end this early, I'm in for a long fucking night. And he was in for a long night. So he drops him with the first right hand over the top, and he starts, already by the end of the round, he's winging right hands and missing badly. And he just looks, that experience is coming into play. Dubois, who's been there before, like the Kevin Lerena fight when he went down 3 times, he looked composed. He got up. He steadied himself. By the end of the round, he was making Wardley miss. He wins the second round. And then in the third round, Wardley drops him again. And I'm saying by the end of the round, this is odd. But I don't know how many fights you would see a fighter score 2 knockdowns in the first 3 rounds, and you still don't feel like he's out of the woods. You still don't feel like you're comfortable with what you're seeing on his side, because he just couldn't settle down, Raheem. And it just looked like a fighter with inexperience compared to Dubois, who was staying very composed. And it's just like, if I don't get him out of here early, there's anxiety there. And he just became, throughout the fight, except for one burst in the 8th round, where he found a little bit of energy, and he swept the right hand of the body, and then he landed a right uppercut to give himself a moment. When Dubois, after the 3rd round, from 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, he really controlled the action. But Wardley and I bring up the uppercut because he was so one note with his offense. And even the 2 sweeping right hands that landed in the first round, they both came off the same setup. An up jab, sweep the right hand over the top. It was the same. They didn't land clean. It wasn't like a crash right on the chin, hit him in the sweet spot. They were both kind of shots that touched him on the top of the head, almost to the back of the head the second time. And he just was so one note with the same setup over and over and over again. And I guess Don Charles prepared Daniel Dubois for that well, because when he swept it over the top, besides the 2 times he got caught, really, he would duck underneath it. And then when he tried the 1-2 right down the pipe, he would just take a step out of range and then reset his positioning. Basically, though, to answer your question, my thought after the first 3 rounds was, I got you up 3 points, 29-26, and yet I still don't like where you're headed in the fight. Very odd. I can't recall too many fights where a fighter gets 2 knockdowns in the first 3 rounds and you still don't feel like he's really in full control of the fight.
The beauty of the fact that we do what we do in front of cameras and microphones is there is a record. We got receipts. Mm-hmm. You've got your round by round. People don't have to take your word for it. And I suggest people go back and watch the round for round even after they've seen the fight. It's that good. I did my show with David Hay, and in real time, David has to admit, because we were in full disagreement, after the first knockdown, everybody was screaming. I said, Daniel can win this fight. Daniel can win this fight. Calm down. And the reason I said that after the first knockdown is because I've been hit like that before. He didn't get hurt. He just got hit on a button and didn't know why he was on the canvas. It was how he responded to that said to me, oh, something's changed. He got right up, probably not advisable. But what it said to me was he wasn't knocked down because he was hurt. He wasn't unsure, even though he didn't know why he was on the canvas. He wasn't unsure about what he was in there to do. He didn't start questioning whether or not he was in the right place or even if he wanted to be there. He got right back up. And the knockdown not rattling him, even though at the moment it makes no sense to you because I was just up, didn't see the punch coming, hit him in the back of the head. That's a soft spot. Goes down, he just finds himself on his butt. That's enough to rattle a guy who's been rattled mentally before. Didn't faze him. He went on to win the second round with fundamentals.
Yeah.
With fundamentals. Then we go into the third round. And Wardley lands a nice shot, but also not a hellacious punch. Just Daniel trying to figure out what exactly Wardley can do. Because we saw, like you said, he kept repeating something, but Wardley does hit hard, especially early. He puts everything behind his shots. He was able to connect a few times and hit Daniel with punches Daniel didn't see coming, but should have. And I believe was trained to see coming. So he was missing shots more so than Wardley was throwing from extraordinary angles or with speed and timing that was able to get past Dubois' field of vision. Dubois was just missing him. So he took a step back and took that knee. But he was composed when he took the knee. He got up off the knee again, probably earlier than the corner would have liked, but he wasn't down there thinking about it. He got up earlier than the corner would have liked, but at a speed that let me know this is not the knee that we have seen before. He wasn't on his knee trying to figure out what to do, looking to his father for instruction as to whether or not he should even continue. He was actually figuring it out in real time. He took a knee to think about something that he actually was considering on his own instead of looking outside himself for the answer. And from the time he got up off of that knee in the third round, the fight was never the same. He had figured out what was going on in there. He knew he could get up. He knew that this Fabio Wardley wasn't going to be able to overwhelm him, confuse him. He wasn't going to Usyk him. This was the kind of fight that Wardley, or I should say Dubois, wanted to be in. And so I know I stopped you at the third, so I'll stop at the third myself. But when I saw the fourth, that's when I said Dubois winning this fight. Actually, I said that when he got up off the knee.
You said that before the fight,
third.
actually.
I said that too, yes.
You said it before
But to the
the
people
first.
I was with, who were sure at this point in the first knockdown that maybe Wardley was just going to walk right through Daniel Dubois and we might not even see round three. And then after the knee, they were sure that Daniel was bottling it again. We were going to see him quit, that this was going to be an affirmation of everything that they thought of poorly about him going in. But when he got up off, it was the way he went down and the way he got up that let me know that the narratives going in, which I disbelieved, were indeed untrue. And that we were in for the best Daniel Dubois we've probably ever seen, because he's finally figured out who he is, why he's there, and exactly how to do the thing that he does best. And that is what we saw. Fourth round, crazy. Fourth round, the fact that after the first knockdown, he comes back and has a great second. After the knockdown in the third round, he comes back and has even a better fourth than he had a second, Sean. You're so right in what was the execution of Wardley so repetitive, but by the time we get to the fourth, now it's with the trainers. Daniel has to be kept on that track by Don Charles. Daniel has to be given the instruction in the corner, stayed focused. He can win this fight. All the things are there. The fact that those knockdowns happened when they did is a blessing, is a godsend for him. And in the corner of Wardley, it's time for an adjustment.
Yep.
It's time for Ben Davison to be this golden boy, young phenom, blonde-haired, British, great corner man that everybody's giving him credit for, that he's supposed to be the guy to go to, that he's taken this white-collar fighter, made him a world champion. Well, now it's time for Ben Davison to not only beat the guy who put down Anthony Joshua, in my respect, somewhat due to Davidson's instructions in the corner, to overcome that hurdle and show what he can really do with a fighter who is in the fight completely, but needs to make an adjustment. What did you see at that point?
He blew a lead. You know, if this was football, right, it'd be like, hey, you're coach of the Niners. You were up 21-3 at halftime, and you blew the lead and got out-coached. You know, he blew the lead. And before I get to Davison, you mentioned the fundamentals of Dubois, and that is where he overcame what I thought Wardley would have to overcome him. Because if you remember, I didn't feed into any narratives about Daniel Dubois being a quitter. I mean, he had shown as much grit in his career as he had quit, to quote Tim Bradley. I thought the twitchiness and the guy who can fight with the lead hand low and is a little bit more explosive and snappy, which I think at least early Wardley was. It wasn't like Dubois was ripping quick combinations or anything like that. Wardley was explosive and snappy. It was just he was predictable. He was one note. He was wild at times. He wasn't always fundamentally sound. And Dubois, who fights, and his sister, in a very fundamentally sound style, overcame those attributes of Wardley, specifically with the jab. And to Davison now, when it comes to adjustments, Wardley, who had that erratic energy, despite jumping out to a good early lead in this fight, he was erratic. Dubois was composed. That's the experience of both fighters. But to your point, it's also the corner. And if you're Davison, I'm watching the fight, and it's like, you know, to put on my best trainer hat, I would tell Wardley, let the fight come to you a little bit. You keep trying to force this right hand, and I know you've had success with it early on, but he's making you miss it 95% of the time. And your up jab against that more ramrod, shotgun, you know, fundamental with the hands up higher jab of Dubois, which was winning the jab battle, but Wardley was having success with his up jab. It's a quick up jab. Let the fight come to you a little bit and vary up the attack a little bit. Wardley might not have that experience, but he's shown in little flashes and glimpses better punch selection and creativity than just boom, 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 over and over again with the one and the two and the one in the overhand, like when he hurt him with the uppercut. Wardley has a good uppercut. So maybe fight the battle of the jabs, settle the hell down a little bit, stop loading up and missing, and not only are you burning up your energy by being erratic, you're burning it up by missing and taking big home run swings and hitting nothing but air, which plenty of champions will tell you takes something out of you every time. And Dubois didn't go to the body a lot, but he showed so much composure and IQ in this fight, because one of the times he did go to the body is when it was at the end of the fifth, when he was really starting to feel that Wardley was huffing and puffing, and he dug a left hook to the body. He leaned on Wardley. He was out of the Lennox Lewis school of British heavyweight boxing with the headlocks. Every time Wardley would get in those precarious defensive positions, slink to his right, get out of, and Tim Bradley, Raheem, he calls that the oh shit defensive position. It's where you might be resourceful enough to get your head off the line and out of dodge, but your eyes are off the target, and it's not really a sustainable defensive maneuver. It's one he taught me about when Caleb Plant was heading into the Canelo fight. And sure enough, on fight night, every time Caleb would slink down to his right, it became predictable, and Canelo would have an answer for it.
And you're susceptible to the uppercut, which Daniel did not take advantage of
right.
Almost at all. But if he had been shooting that uppercut every time Wardley fell in with the defense, we don't see 11. I love the football analogy, because what great coaches know is when you're ahead, how to stay ahead. When you're in the lead and the opponent, in the football analogy, the team, but in boxing, your opponent is recouping and is able now to figure out how the fight is going to go, change how the fight is going.
Slow it down.
In that moment, Wardley changes what he's doing, it would have upset Daniel Dubois' mentality, because Daniel had figured out what was happening, and because Wardley was so repetitive, and Daniel is such a one-track horse that if as long as things are going the way he expects, he's unstoppable. I think he's unbeatable. As long as he knows what's happening and he's getting what he expects, he's never going to stop. It's when you give him something he doesn't understand, when you change something fundamentally that he's not prepared to adjust to. When he gets confused, then he gets overwhelmed, then he short circuits, then he does what people call quit sometimes, because he doesn't know how to go forward with the roadmap ahead of him. If Wardley changes up what he is doing after the fourth, it's a reset for Wardley, and I actually believe that Daniel Dubois is in a lot of trouble.
May I provide an example from
Sure.
1 week ago? So Jaime Munguia on the co-main of Benavidez Zurdo is up 4-0 against Armando Resendiz, right? But in rounds 3 and 4, Resendiz is starting to get a beat on Munguia. He's still losing, but he's starting to catch Munguia with right hands, which Munguia is susceptible to. And Munguia, who's still in his formation with Eddie Reynoso, who's a proven great trainer, in the 5th round he comes out and boxes in a disciplined manner that Munguia is just not like him before with Eddie Reynoso. He moves around the ring. He takes air out of the ball a little bit. He runs some clock. He takes a walk. He goes and takes a walk. And he goes, because Resendiz is just starting to get comfortable, starting to open up and exchange punches with him at the same time. And then all of a sudden, Munguia switches the rhythm up on him. He doesn't give him that look. He boxes for an entire 3 minutes. And now Resendiz is all out of it. And then the next round, he builds off of that game plan and starts punching off that movement. And then it's a rout from there on. Resendiz is never in the fight again. And that was Canelo and Reynoso ringside and in the corner, saying, box, cabron. But I think that's what Wardley needed heading into his 4th and 5th round was you fight off the jab, slow it down a little bit. Let's settle down. We're going to burn ourselves up here. And let's look for something else other than that right hand now, and we'll get back to it later. It'll open itself up, but if you keep trying to force that square peg in a round hole, it's not going to work.
We couldn't hear in the corner every word that was said. We couldn't hear a lot of the words that were said. In fact, also, the first break after the first round, they ran a commercial on DAZN. You predatory capitalist pieces of shit. Don't ever do that again. People are paying a subscription fee for DAZN, then we're paying pay-per-view on top of that, and then you want to start running commercials between the rounds. I'm watching commercials on Amazon I'm paying for. People watching commercials on Netflix now, and then we're paying pay-per-view on top of subscription to watch a commercial between rounds when you want to know what's happening in the corner. And there's been a knockdown in the first round. Now, to their credit, I think somebody made an executive decision and said, we're not doing that for the rest of this fight. Because if they did it in the first round, they were planning to do it later in the fight, if not between every round, and they cut that out. And I have rewatched this fight, and they took the commercial out. So I got to see, I rewatched it. I wasn't even planning to rewatch the whole thing. I just wanted to see if maybe they would do that so I could see what was said in the corner after the first, and they in fact did. So on the one hand, you guys are garbage for doing that in the first place, but kudos to you for figuring that out quick enough to not make it worse than what it was. Now, with that said, I couldn't tell you what exactly was the instruction to Wardley after the 4th round from Ben Davison. All I can tell you is what we saw Wardley actually do, which was exactly what we saw him do in the first 3 rounds. So either Ben Davison was telling him to adjust and do something different and Wardley wasn't listening. I find that kind of hard to believe. Or Ben Davison was drinking the same Kool-Aid that Wardley was drinking, that a lot of the fans who predicted Wardley would win was drinking, that doing what he'd been doing would be enough to beat Daniel. And the first knockdown and the second knee on top of that was confirmation for them that this was the ultimate conclusion to this fight. So just keep trying to land that big bomb. And the reason the big bomb's not landing, you say, let's have a jab competition. There was no jab. There was no jab. What Wardley was anticipating was that Dubois was going to bite on the feint. And everybody gives Dubois a ton of stick because he doesn't move his head. But you know the irony? Because Dubois doesn't move his head, he don't bite on feints. That's something your coach should know. You need a jab to set up a right hand. Most fighters that are technically proficient, that move their head, will bite on a feint occasionally, if not all the time, if you're real good at it. And that ducks them in, and here comes your right hand, and that closes the distance where Dubois stepping back instead of moving his head. He's not biting ever. And since you're not setting it up with a jab, and on top of that, when you do get to jabbing with him, Dubois has a superior jab. And to Don Charles' credit, Don Charles drills and drills and drills the double jab. And even though Dubois, I didn't do it enough for my want, like I wanted him to see him do it even more, his jab is so strong, it's basically a left hand. I mean, his jab is a power punch, and if you double it, you ain't getting past it. Every time he doubles it, and so you saw Wardley, and I believe it was the fourth, walk into the stiff jab when he was trying to set up his own right hand, and you see it register in his face. It hit him like right here, right on the chin, and half the glove was into the neck. And you see it register on his face like he just got hit by a car. That adjustment has to be made in the corner. That's on Ben Davison. This guy, Wardley, doesn't have an amateur record. He's a white-collar fighter. You got to know that right now, he's just being outclassed by fundamentals. There's very obvious answers to this unless you, too, are the same type of novice that your fighter is.
I actually think he was having success with his up jab. It just was underutilized. It's like George Foreman used to say, you got to believe in your jab, you know, on the HBO calls. And he's just using it as a means to an end to throw something behind it. Whereas, like you said, Dubois is using it as a consistent, steady weapon, means of control of the fight. And actually, my old school trainer, Pat Barry, would say the jab is your best friend when you're tired, too. And Wardley was tired early in this fight from whiffing and winging right hands. And again, I was making a point earlier about Dubois with his Lennox Lewis school of clinching. Yeah, he would headlock him whenever Wardley would give position right there. The way he leaned on him on the ropes, he came in heavy at 251, and that was a good calculation on his part because he was stronger than Wardley. And even would get and savvy, you know, the refs to your back, hold on to the ropes a little bit, give you more leverage when you're leaning on them. And that tired Wardley out big time over and over again. And yeah, Ben Davison was also too brave for his fighter. And I wonder if some of that was ego from a young guy who wants that retribution against Daniel Dubois from the Joshua fight. You got to wonder. Sometimes corners are too brave for their own good. And I think Wardley, in the last round or two, was even showing with his body language, someone please help me, you know? So,
Yo, I like the note about Dubois using his weight on Wardley and tying him up. And yeah, he used the rope for leverage. When I first saw that, I was upset because he would always do that after having offensive success. And I was like, why not throw more combos after
pacing
the success?
Himself. He chipped away at it. IQ.
It took me a minute to see that this was strategy and not energy, right? I was like, oh, are you trying to rest? Are you smothering your own work? Are you giving Wardley a break while you're taking one? But no, it's what you said exactly, and he did it throughout the whole fight. And while he never got Wardley down, which made me think of Jake LaMotta, it must have taken some toll on Wardley's legs. Not enough, but enough to get us out of there in the 11th. And it was a disciplined, consistent strategy that he used. And I have to admit that it took me a minute to figure out that it was a strategy and not a mistake. The problem that you're talking about with Ben Davison being too brave, he's not too brave. He has the same mentality that his fighter has. That's the problem. They're both thinking the same fucking thing. And Ben's job is to think of everything else. If his fighter's thinking one thing, you know what that is. You know what he's going to do based on what he's already thinking. If you've trained him, if you're the guy in the corner that's supposed to talk to him, then you have to think of 7 other things that maybe he should be thinking, that he's not thinking. You got to think of something else to either keep him winning or to get him from behind. And once you get past 4 and 5, you know, because in the 6 is when the fight turns, you know your fighter's on his heels now. You're losing a fight where you've gotten 2 knockdowns, but only won those 2 rounds. And now Dubois starting to go downhill. That 6th round, if you didn't know before the 6th, which you should have, in the 6th round, that is a statement round by Dubois. And the fight never really got back on the rails for Wardley after that.
To cut Ben some slack, his guy, like in the 8th round with a spurt, even in the 10th round, he landed a right hand that wasn't getting the same snap on it after Dubois was beating the fight out of him. And again, Dubois paced himself beautifully in this fight. He chipped away at it. He was smart. Again, Wardley's a little bit more explosive than he is to not just at some point go all out. And the one time he really viciously exchanged with Wardley was during Wardley's spurt in the 8th to not let him take the play away. And then the referee actually jumped in a little too soon there at I think it was the 10-second mark. He thought it was the final bell. But the way Wardley just chipped away at it, stayed behind his jab, what was working, leaning on him. Say again?
You mean Dubois chipped away at it?
Yeah, Dubois, excuse me, yes. The way Dubois chipped away at it, very smart on his part. But for Davison, I'm saying something else. What was I saying about Davison again? Right before that.
No, you were saying to, I guess, come to his defense.
Oh, to his defense. Yeah. Wardley would every now and then, even in the 10th round, had a right hand that it was like a little bit like Ammo Williams a month or so ago against Carlos Adames, where he's taking a beating, but he's still landing a shot here and there, and he's known as a puncher and is a puncher that makes the corner keep sending him out there a little bit. But this was more egregious than what Kevin Cunningham had. And for Ben Davison, again, to cut him slack, the guy gave him some glimmers of hope here and there. And he has been known to pull it out from the fire. He just did against Park, but this wasn't happening. He's going to have to – look, it's tough when you're in my profession a little bit, not to the level he has been. I've been there where you're a young hotshot who's moving and grooving, and I'm picking a lot of the fights right, and you're a know-it-all. Like you've been such a studious student. You feel like you got all the answers. And then life and your profession humble you a little bit, right? I'm picking more fights wrong than I used to now. He's losing more fights now than he's probably accustomed to, getting off to a hot start in his career. And now the question is, and I believe he can become seasoned from these experiences. And 10, 15 years from now, we'll be looking at a grizzled, veteran, experienced, top-flight trainer. But these are the moments that he'll have to learn from and grow from. And do you believe he will?
Sean, I appreciate the slack that you are looking to cut this man. And I am not looking to bury him, but I have to be honest about what's going on. And the fact that Wardley has pulled out fights late with a big right hand is not a secret to anybody. Yeah, we know. That doesn't make you any less responsible for the end of this fight. In fact, it makes you more responsible because, as I just said, it's the one thing you don't need to be thinking. You need to be thinking about how else he can win this fight. How he can win this fight if that right hand doesn't land, especially by the point you realize it's not landing, that he's taking huge misses. He's lucky that Dubois isn't shooting uppercuts every single time. And he's getting beat to the jab and getting hurt with the jab. And he's getting beat up, and he's not making any adjustments, and you're not offering him anything else. So you're waiting on the same wish horse that your fighter is. Even if you think it's going to happen, give him some more options. Let's hedge the bet a little bit. Unless you can't. And the fighters in the ring, like I said before the fight, were only one of the 2 fights happening. The other fight was happening in the corner. And it's the second time Don Charles sunned Ben Davison, who's gotten so much more credit for being a trainer than Don Charles has. And the time that happened was when Dubois got up off of that third round knee and went back in the corner and came out in the fourth, because you know what? That was the same start Anthony Joshua had. Think about that. Dubois had the same start that Joshua had when Dubois needed to cement his legacy as a heavyweight champion for real, even though he came in with the belt, while Wardley was trying to cement his legacy as a heavyweight champion for real, even though he came in with the belt. He got the same start that Dubois got, and Dubois gave it to them. And it was the second time Ben Davison is seeing Dubois. And you know what Davison told Anthony Joshua to do in that moment when he was in the situation that Dubois was in? To roll the dice. To roll the dice. You know when you roll the dice, it's because you don't got the cards, bro. That's a game of chance, man. You know, Ben Davison rolls the dice. Don Charles plays the cards he's dealt. That's why you play blackjack if you want to win at the casino and not roulette or craps. That's the difference.
Oh, man, Raheem is cooking. Right? Raheem is dropping gems. Yeah, same. He was put in the same scenario Don Charles was that Davison was in, except he had an answer. He had the right preparation, and then he had the right motivation in the corner. He didn't go, Daniel, go out there and roll the dice. He said, bop, bop.
Yeah,
Rock in and wake up, Felix
on the
Trinidad
table.
Senior style. Like when Trinidad used to get dropped, and his pops, you remember, in the corner would bop, bop, Tito, wake up, and then he would get to work, and he would get to work. So
that's right. Now in the sunset of this fight, we got to talk about this. We got to talk about this because all the conversation around it is same thing that you've been saying, and the same thing I was hearing in the building when I was calling the fight with David. David was saying it. Wardley's gonna dig it out. Wardley's gonna find a way. That right hand is coming. He's missing with it. He shouldn't be throwing it so wild. He should be setting it up, but he's gonna hit Dubois with it. They're still believing that. They're still believing that. And I don't think they're believing it that way if the first round and the third round knockdowns don't happen. That's why I was saying from the beginning, that's why I set it up the way that I did, because you know in science, the worst thing you can do is have a premeditated notion of what is going to occur in your scientific experiment. Once you start doing that, then you start shaping your experiment to get the result that you expect. And that's what's happening in this fight. They're just expecting that Wardley's going to do that. And Wardley should be expecting it. That's exactly what should be happening in his mind. And anything else that's going on in his mind should have been put there by Ben Davison to make that more likely. But since that didn't happen, they're just betting on the one roll of the dice. They're just betting that, one of these times we're going to come up and hit the number one of these times. And what is Dubois doing? Sticking the jab. He's hitting him with the right hand. He is weighing on him, leaning on him. He's got him in the headlock. And at any point, it is true that Wardley could have landed that right hand because we've seen him before, but there wasn't as much mustard on it as it was. And if he was going to do it, it wouldn't even been the right hand. You know the shot that would have done it if it was going to happen? It's going to be that uppercut. That uppercut was the best punch he landed in the second half of the fight. It was clean. It was everything he had behind it. And Daniel didn't go anywhere. You know why? Because Daniel don't got a weak chin. Daniel is not a fold-over fighter. Daniel gets broken here, not here. And by that time, Daniel was sure of what was happening. And Ben Davison and Fabio Wardley were unable to throw any curveballs. All they were throwing were strikes. And he was able to sit on a pitch. I know how we like to change analogies and bring other sports into it. Well, I know you Brits don't know much about baseball, but the Americans know what I'm talking about. All he was giving Dubois was pitches to hit. And so what happens is in the sunset of this fight, everybody loses focus on the ball. And let me tell you something. Before, right after the fight, I called you right after the fight, obviously, like I do. And I was steaming. Let me tell you, you talked to me immediately after the fight. I'm making a police report. Ben Davison's going to jail. The whole team in the corner, straight to jail. Straight to jail. I don't want don't pass go.
The manner in which you said it.
Collect $200, put these people away, until we figure out what to do with this kind of criminal. You understand? I have since taken a step back. I have looked at the situation at the top of the 10th round, which was egregious. But it wasn't as bad as what I thought it was. What I thought it was everybody saw what I saw while watching television, that Wardley stumbles out of the fucking corner, doesn't have his balance, barely knows where he's at, and instead of the referee saying, walk to me, like he would have done if Wardley gets up off the canvas, don't matter. Ain't no difference if he gets up off the stool. If you see that the fighter cannot spatially be aware or has no balance, you walk towards me. That don't have to be after a knockdown. That could be at any point when the action is stopped because you think this guy don't got it. But he didn't tell him to walk toward him. Instead, the referee missed the stumble. Go back and watch it. I thought the referee was egregious. But what he was not paying attention. He was looking for the doctor. He was worried about the eye, the nose, and he wasn't paying attention to the actual fighter in real time. So he's looking for the doctor. Fucking Wardley's over there stumbling. And then he goes over and gets Wardley and guides him to the doctor because he don't know where the fuck he's at. And what's Ben Davison doing, who should have thrown in the towel immediately? No questions asked. Forget about it. The fight is fucking over. What's he doing? He's talking to his second. You can see him down there, but he's fucking... They're not paying attention either. They send their guy off the stool and get to doing clerical work in the corner. And so they missed him stumbling, which is better than them seeing it and not throwing in the towel. But it isn't an excuse for not seeing it. They missed it. So neither the ref nor the corner saw that moment that was so obviously the time to stop the fight. So ironically, I am less indicting them for that missed opportunity because they didn't know it at the time. But it is a blight on both of their records that they missed it.
Yeah, the ref was saying, "You good? You good? Because this is a good ass fight. Okay, go ahead, go back out there. Give us some more." See more of this shit. So, yeah, I'll close on this. I talk now. As long as Ben Davison retains Moses Italma, third time's the charm. I do think so, but I suspect you don't want to hear that shit right now. It's Dubois' hour. He's the toast of the United Kingdom, as he fully deserves to be. So I'm not going to really harp on that too much. And I talked to you about it yesterday, and you're friends with the old man, Frank Warren. And, that's a beloved mob term for you Brits over there. When the Don, okay? You got a relationship with the old man. And he says, well, no, I wonder, I said, do you think Frank would make Italma and Dubois? And I'm thinking to myself, well, no. Well, he might. What I think he would rather try to do, if I'm speculating, which I am, is get Dubois in position to fight the winner of Fury and Joshua, and get Italma maybe to fight Kabiel, and maybe think of positioning him for a Usyk fight, because I don't know. I just think I can't think of a trilogy where one fighter has lost twice by stoppage and you have a third fight anyways, and that would be Dubois and Usyk a third time around. But I do think Dubois, if Joshua can get past Fury, or if Fury gets past Joshua, Dubois is a brand new fight, a huge domestic level fight. It's a chance for Fury to win a world title again, go out on top in that sense. And if Joshua wins, same thing. It's a chance for him to become world champion and avenge a one-sided but really exciting fight he had with Daniel Dubois the first time. That has bad blood there too. And I think for Italma, I think Italma beats anybody not named Usyk. And I think if he proves all the rhetoric I'm saying, then I think the fight in the division becomes Usyk if he could get past the Dubois, if he could get past the Kabiel. So, yeah, I do think Davison, the third time, would be the charm as long as he retains his duties with Moses Italma, which I think he will. And but that's not – I don't want to harp on that too much because I don't want to take away from a great moment from Daniel Dubois. And Italma has to prove himself.
I'll give you a very British saying in response to everything that you just said. Third time lucky. If he gets it the third time, it's luck, pal. That ain't, you keep rolling the dice. You are going to hit the number eventually. You crap out twice. You think that's a good night at the casino? Let me tell you something. Before we can have a conversation about any of those possibilities, and maybe because you were doing the stream, you may have missed this part, but there's a rematch clause, Sean.
Oh, okay, right.
None of that's happening, what you're talking about, unless Wardley passes on the rematch. Now,
not out of the question. He might want to take a rest. It could go either way. I wouldn't be surprised if he takes it, if he takes the rematch clause. But I wouldn't be shocked if he says, I need some rest, But he'll probably take it.
Let me tell you something. Fabio Wardley is going to say, give me that fight as soon as you fucking can get it in the ring. Give me Daniel Dubois again. Give me Daniel Dubois next Saturday. They would. Excuse me. I've been up 24 hours. Almost. I had a 1 hour nap.
Yeah, we're not editing that out. They got to see the struggle for Ryan.
Fabio Wardley would get up out of his hospital bed to take that fight. That's who Fabio Wardley is.
He's Apollo in the wheelchair after the first fight. So I want you again, Balboa. Everybody knows that's him.
Yeah. He's a monster, man. He's a monster. You got to remember, his glove never touched the canvas. After all of that,
he was a second or two away from getting David Morelled and getting stood up in the corner.
He had the referee taking him to the doctor multiple times. He had an eye with a golf ball in it and a nose gushing blood. He could have just said, I can't see. Oh, can you see? Oh, no, I want to fight, but I can't see. He could have got out of that fight multiple times with respect. And he kept going back in. He kept trying. He kept believing. You had to stop him, or he'd still be on his feet right now. He may not be anywhere near in his brain. He might be on Mars mentally, but I feel like his body would still be there, getting battered about. That's why they say you got to save a fighter from themselves. He's the kind of fighter you got to save from himself. And since Ben Davison didn't save him from himself, they weren't able to put together a game plan that was effective. And they also didn't have the ability to create a adjustment that would change the plight of this fight or save their fighter. They've got one more opportunity to do it. Ben Davison needs to talk Fabio Wardley out of taking this immediate rematch.
Ooh.
Let the clause go. You want to get out of jail? Because in my mind, you're in jail. You want to get out of jail? I'm sitting here talking to you like I gotta turn you. Like I gotta make you a fucking snitch. I gotta send you in to the hospital with a wire. I gotta be like, listen, I need you to get Fabio Wardley to say on tape that he won't take the rematch. I need you to get him to sign off on passing on this immediate rematch. That's your job. You want to get out of jail? That's what you got to do.
Now, I don't think it's an unwinnable fight, Raheem.
And I'm so glad you said that. I'm so glad you said that, Sean. And usually I don't talk over you, but boy, you set me up right there. The reason that Fabio Wardley took the unnecessary battering that he did, because at no point did anybody think it wasn't a winnable fight. It was still a winnable fight all the way until the time the referee jumped in there. And I'm not suggesting that a rematch isn't winnable. I'm saying it ain't worth it. That 10th round and half of that 11th round wasn't worth it. You stopped that fight really on the stool after the 9th, but certainly after the stumble at the top of the 10th. It ain't worth it. You go back, you fight another year, you reconstitute, you make sure that your faculty are together. It's not just that he can't take a battering like that again. Maybe he can, but not back to back. Give him something else in between. Give him a good, decent, long rest. If you aren't good enough to give him the adjustments that he needs or to be paying attention when he's got to have the towel thrown in, you become a better trainer in the meantime as well. And then you get this guy ready to get back into the mix and go into another war like that, which I'm not saying he shouldn't or can't do at some point, but not immediately. And Daniel shouldn't be held up waiting for him to have an immediate rematch while he heals up. This guy is busted up. And he's just too strong, too mentally strong, too physically just steel for his own good. And he will want to get back in there. That's not the thing to do. That as a trainer, that's not the right thing to do. As a trainer, you take it, you say, we're not doing that. You still believe in me? We're still together? You do that, I'm leaving. I'm not going to be in the corner if you try that again because I believe you can win it. I just think with the damage that you'll take doing it and the shortening of your career and potentially life quality that you'll take for winning right now isn't worth what you can get out of it winning in a year when the fight would be if Dubois is still around, if Dubois still has a title or maybe is unified at that point. Who knows what is going to be the landscape in a year or so. Maybe he gets a title off, and I'm saying Wardley off of somebody else in the meantime, and this is a unification bout. You don't need this fight again immediately. There are other options. He's a white-collar fighter who won the World Heavyweight Championship and was just in one of the most brutal heavyweight battles Britain has ever seen. Give him a minute. Guide his career since you couldn't guide the fight.